Good day, Body20 Network. Neil Kemper here, your International EMS Master Trainer, and welcome to the third division of EMS Masterclass Top Tips to follow Bats' segment on our valuable member orientation checklist. Today, the topics of discussion are some of the most important to us as a Body20 network, and those topics of discussion are your member progressive training program, as well as the 6 weekly results tracking process. Let's dive in a bit further and have a look. Progression is defined as the process of developing or gradually moving towards a more advanced state, with 5 different strength programs, 4 different cardio programs, as well as our EMS Relax program. That is exactly the concept with which we are working towards. Alright, each of these programs is obviously creating a more challenging EMS experience for our clients, which they can work to over the period of designated weeks. This is something that sets us greatly apart from our competitors. And so let's explain to you exactly what the stimulation parameters are doing and why they are changing and how that creates a more challenging experience. Starting with our 5 different strength programs, you'll see that there are a number of different stimulation parameters that we can discuss, starting with the impulse on time, or the amount of time that the contraction is on and actually activating our muscles, and the contraction off time or pause time, the time that the contraction is off and our muscles are resting. You'll notice with the first 4 strength programs that our impulse time on and off is both 4 seconds, whereas with our most advanced program, it is 6 seconds on and 6 seconds off. Also, you'll notice that the contraction time and the pause times are always the same, whether it's the 4 seconds or the 6 seconds. This has been gradually tested and developed and determined by research that your contraction time does actually have to be the same amount of time as your pause time. Alright, this is to avoid conditions such as involitional fatigue, in which we overload our muscles with a longer contraction time than a resting time. These contraction on and off times need to be equal for us to give our best exert during the actual session. Alright, the second stimulation parameter that we can discuss is obviously our hertz. Alright, now what is a hertz? A hertz in EMS is one single unit cycle, and to translate that into conventional strength training and conventional muscle activation, it is 1 action potential. That is all it is. Hertz in EMS training is action potentials in conventional strength training. And so for every hertz that we are working with on our stimulation frequency, we are generating 1 action potential. Alright, so for the first 3 programs, beginners to advanced, we are working with 85 hertz, which is obviously 85 muscle contractions per second because of the 85 action potentials. Alright, in the last 2 programs, the pre-champ and the champ mode, we're amping up those hertz to increase the intensity of 90 hertz or 90 action potentials and 90 muscle contractions per second, which is obviously more intense than our first 3 programs. Alright. The next stimulation parameter with which we can discuss is our pulse width, otherwise known as the depth penetration. Alright, so when we're thinking of the hertz and the muscle twitches that they incur, each of these muscle twitches needs to last for a specific amount of time, and that amount of time is measured in microseconds or thousandths of a second. Remember, muscle twitches can happen very, very rapidly within a short space of time, and so each muscle twitch only needs to be a very limited amount of time. In our first program, our Body20 basic program, that amount of time for each muscle twitch or our pulse width is 350 microseconds. As we move on throughout the program, this will increase slightly. So to intermediate, where we're ramping it up to 365 microseconds, 375 microseconds for our advanced program, 400 microseconds for our pre-champ and shank programs, which is a considerable strenuous muscle twitch. The next stimulation parameter that we can discuss is obviously our pulse ramp. So what is a pulse ramp now? Alright, imagine a contraction. The contraction has to start and reach peak force within a certain amount of time. That is exactly what our pulse ramp is. With our Body20 basic program, we have a 0.4 second pulse ramp. In other words, over the first 0.4 seconds of contraction, where it starts, it'll take almost half a second to reach peak contraction. In our intermediate program, it's only 0.2 seconds, and as of our advanced program, we have a 0 second 0-second pulse ramp. Once you have a 0-second pulse ramp, this means that the contraction is very, very sharp, i.e. from the onset of contraction, we are hitting peak muscle contraction or muscle tetanus from the onset or from the get-go, making it a very explosive contraction. Cool. The next thing that we can discuss is our time allocation for the amount of weeks that we can train on each program before progressing to the next program and a more strenuous intensity in terms of the EMS device. Alright, please pay attention to your progression charts in this regard because research has determined the most adequate amount of time for each program before we can offer a greater intensity to a client. And for Body20 Basic to Body20 Intermediate, that time allocation is 6 weeks, i.e. we need to train for 6 consecutive weeks before progressing from Body20 Basic to Intermediate, and from then on the time allocations will increase to ensure the proper amount of progression. And so from intermediate to advanced, it's 8 weeks. From advanced to pre-champ, it's 10 weeks. And from pre-champ to champ mode, it is 12 weeks of consecutive training. Now, remember, this is consecutive training. And so what happens, for example, if someone gets 8 weeks into their progressive training program on a Body20 advanced setting and then misses 2 weeks? Alright, so they don't have to start at scratch on the advanced program, but what they do have to do is go and catch up the number of sessions that they missed on the previous program. And so because they missed 2 weeks or they missed 2 sessions, they will need to then complete 2 intermediate sessions before continuing on their advanced program. Alright, so then they'll do their session 9 and 10 on the advanced program only after they've caught up the 2 missed weeks on the intermediate program and then progressing to our pre-champ mode. And so the last thing that we can discuss is resistance in the actual training routines themselves. Alright, it is very important that during the basic program or the first 6 weeks of whole body EMS training that we do not use any external or additional resistance to training. Body weight exercise only. And there is a scientific reason behind this. There's a big misconception about EMS training that if we load the muscles with weight, in addition to using the stimulation that we're getting from the device, that we're creating the maximum benefit. But we're not, because actually what we're doing is we're creating lazy clients. All it's doing is creating in their mindset that now they've got the stimulation coming into the muscles and they're carrying dumbbells or barbells or so on, that they do not need to focus on voluntary muscle flexion. Please don't pay attention to that. That is the wrong mindset to have. We should be focusing as much on our voluntary flexion as we are getting muscle contraction from the actual device itself. And so the harder the machine makes your muscles contract, the harder you should be focusing on contracting your muscles themselves. It is called building a mind-to-muscle connection, and it's one of the most prominent benefits of EMS training. And so again, for those first 6 weeks, body weight exercises only, focusing on voluntary muscle flexion, as well as adapting to the EMS device and adapting to the stimulation so that we may slowly increase our rate of perceived exertion up towards that 8 out of 10. When we get to our intermediate program, we can start to incorporate some light resistance bands as well as the TRX, and only once we've reached our advanced program should we really be adding any light dumbbells and kettlebells and barbells and all those sorts of things once our mind to muscle connection has actually been developed, and now we can place additional load on the muscles to offer those benefits as well. Alright, so now we get to the stimulation parameters of our grueling cardio and enduro programs. The first stimulation parameter, as we know, is impulse time on and off. This is not really applicable for the cardio settings because obviously it is an endless impulse. And so on our progressive chart over there, it'll just say 1 second on and 0 seconds off, which obviously means on all of the time. Alright, but then we get to the hertz. Now, you'll notice that the hertz with our cardio programs and our enduro programs are far, far less than we find on our strength programs. This is obviously because the impulse is endless and we're not giving our muscles that rest. And so if we were to subject them to the same hertz rate as we do in strength, it would cause involutional fatigue within the first few minutes of exercise. And also to do our cardio and dynamic exercises with an endless impulse is obviously applicable, whereas to do it with an impulse that's on and off is not really applicable. Imagine doing squat jumps, for example, and the contract hits you as you're in mid-air. Wouldn't be very comfortable. All right, so you'll see with our first cardio programs, we're starting off at 10 hertz. Remember, that's 10 action potentials per second or 10 muscle twitches per second. As we reach our Enduro basic program, we ramp it up to 15 hertz. And as we reach our Enduro advanced program, we're ramping it up to 20 hertz, which is quite significant for a metabolic setting. All right, so the next stimulation parameter to discuss is obviously our pulse widths, which stay roughly the same as they do on our strength programs, with our cardio basic program offering us 350 microsecond pulse widths, and then 375 for our cardio advanced and Enduro 20 programs, and lastly 400 microsecond pulse widths for our Enduro advanced program. All right, so that 20 hertz in combination with 400 microsecond pulse widths on our Enduro 20 advanced program make for a very, very intense program. All right, so next up is obviously our impulse rise time, which is also not really applicable to a cardio setting because the impulse only starts once and remains endless throughout the rest of the session. All right, and then obviously lastly is our time allocation for each program. All right, this is vitally important, again, to stick to these time allocations for the progression of each program, especially because our cardio and metabolic programs are predominantly used in combination with our strength programs, i.e. for those clients who are coming twice a week. Our clients are obviously only coming once a week. They're using predominantly the strength setting because it's our most beneficial program, and the clients who will be using the cardio setting are those clients who are either coming 6 times a month or twice a week. Now remember, we are amplifying the intensity of EMS on your body when doing 2 sessions per week. And yes, the cardio programs aren't nearly as destructive, if you want to put it like that, on the actual musculature of the body, but they can amplify the intensity of the strength settings on the body, especially when used in the same week, which they often are. And so that 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 week, and 12 week progression are vitally important to stick to with our strength programs, and obviously 6, 8, and 10 weeks for our cardio programs. Obviously, there's only 4 of those. All right, so lastly is our relax session. Okay, so the impulse on and off time for our relax program is obviously 1 second on, 1 second off, because that is the best contraction and pause times, or roughly the best contraction and pause times, to create a nice muscle pumping action, which will obviously improve circulation throughout our musculature in our body. All right, but when we get to the hertz of the relax program, we see it's at 100 hertz. Now, how does it make sense that our relax program has a higher hertzage than our strength or cardio programs? Surely that would make it more intense on our bodies. But it doesn't, because of our pulse width. Because our pulse width on the relax program is only 150 microseconds, less than half that of strength and our cardio programs, making it far more suitable for relaxation and recovery purposes, and all the other benefits that we can get from our relax program, which you will obviously find in the Body20 EMS training manual. And so, in preparation for the launch of the new progressive training programs, and obviously the increase in the stimulation parameters that go along with them, we had to make sure that these programs are actually safe for application on our clients. And so a small trial was conducted before we launched them to make sure of this. I used myself as a guinea pig, being that I'm already EMS training adapted, and I made use of a newer but still training adapted champ to test 2 of the programs as well. I myself tested the 2 most intense programs, being our Enduro 20 Advanced program and our Body20 Champ program, whereas my colleague tested the Enduro Normal program as well as the Pre-Champ program. The trial lasted 6 weeks, and we made use of both the strength and the cardio or metabolic programs within the same week for 6 consecutive weeks. At the end of the trial, we would need to have our creatine kinase levels tested, which is a marker for exercise intensity on your body and how hard you're loading your body with exercise. My colleague's CK levels measured at about 1,000 units of CK per liter of blood, whereas mine measured at about 2,000 units of CK per liter of blood, neither of which levels are any more significant than a 2-hour gym session, which essentially prove that the programs are safe for clients once they've progressed correctly through the training program principles to our most advanced programs. So this brings us to the second part of our progressive training charts, which Bat has touched on in his member orientation masterclass video. And this is the 6 weeks results tracking of our members' process as well as their goals. Remember, Each client has to have one of these charts on file, on record, all the time, no excuses made. The 6 weeks result tracking chart is very easy to use. In their first official session, when the member orientation checklist is completed, we will record their first in-body results, recorded either at their demo or at their first official session, and recorded on the left-hand column of the progressive training results chart. All right. This is when we can discuss their 6-week goal with them. All right, so we'll write that down in the relevant column over there. And then 6 weeks later, when the client comes back in for their session, a small 5 to 10 minutes consultation needs to be set aside to discuss the client's latest results. Obviously, during that session, they will have recorded their new 6-week results, and then we can discuss that with them and see exactly where they went right and where they went wrong, and what their areas of consistency or focus need to be placed on in the next 6 weeks, so that we may continually track the progress and hold them accountable. So, just because the results chart is set in 6-week intervals does not mean that we are only doing a 6-week recording interval of our actual in-bodies. Remember, in-body results tracking should be done every single week so that we may gather as much data as possible and analyze the overall biggest picture of our in-body results. Remember, there are a number of different things that may or may not interfere with in-body results, such as dehydration, constipation, menstruation, and so on and so forth. And so it's important for us to have all of those data points on hand in case there is an anomaly reading which doesn't read accurately at all, for whatever reason that may be. When we're doing that first consultation with the clients and the consultations thereafter, that discussion needs to be had by either the studio owner or by the manager of the studio. And if they really aren't available during that time period, then obviously the champ's on duty. Okay, so after the first consultation of the first 6 weeks of our basic training protocol, we should have those 2 first columns full. All right, obviously the first column full with the results from either their demo or their first official session, and then the right-hand column full with their latest 6 weeks results. Okay, what you're going to do then is you're going to take their latest 6 weeks results from the right-hand column and you're going to shift them down to the left-hand column in the row below that factor. All right. So once the row below that factor is full with their latest results, we obviously have the space in the column next to it open. At this point, we can discuss the next 6-week goal for that client and which areas are predominantly their focus, where they think they were weakest on, whether it was basic nutrition or it was their hydration, how much water they're drinking every day, whether it was in terms of their consistency or how often they're coming and making it to their sessions, which is obviously on the left side of the charts over there. And we should be tracking how many strength sessions they completed in the 6 weeks and how many cardio sessions they completed in the 6 weeks, if applicable, obviously depending on whether they're coming once, twice a week or 6 times a month. When continuing this process, it's vital to keep it consistent. We should be doing it every single 6 weeks because we need clients to be held as accountable for their results as we are. Body20 has a very wide service offering in the fact that we offer very time efficient and effective training, and that we do weekly in-body assessments, and then we have our nutritional doctor service, and even to the fact where we offer our clients fresh meals. But without diligence or without direction, your consistency and your results can quickly disappear. And so we need to make sure they are as aware of it as we are, and that they are also aware that Body20 is not just a quick fix, but an overall lifestyle change, which is why we are putting in the time and the effort to track all these details with each and every one of our clients and relay that to them in our consultations that we are having with them, so that they may make the necessary adjustments and we may see them getting the results that we really want them to have. So of course our studios have quite a large membership base to deal with, and we cannot have the consultations for our entire membership base in one single week of that 6-week cycle, as it's not really time efficient and will put a lot of strain on us, especially during those peak hours when we have back-to-back sessions and don't have the time to have that consultation with the client. And so what is actually recommended is to split your entire membership base into 4 segments based on the letter that their name starts with, which we can obviously see on BoxChamp because it's sorted alphabetically. And so the first segment will be members' names who start with A to F. During the third week of your 6-week cycle, you will have your 5-minute consultation with everybody's names who start with A to F. The next segment will be G to L, and that will be the 4th week of your 6-week cycle. And then we'll have M to R, which will be the 5th week of your 6-week cycle, and then S to Z, and all those names in the last or the 6th week of your 6-week cycle, making it much more feasible to have an accurate consultation with each member. Obviously, after that 6-week cycle, there'll be the first 2 weeks of the following cycle where you'll discuss no results, and then from week 3, 4, 5, and 6, you will have your consultations again. All right. This is just one recommended approach in terms of splitting your client base, but it can also be done in terms of the page that they show up on your BoxChamp membership list when sorted onto a page of 25 or 50, and so on and so forth. Remember, after each consultation has been had with the client, either directly after the consultation or at the end of the day, we need to send them a push notification from our BoxChamp Communication Center just with the basics of their results that we discussed. So we don't need to go into detail here, as that would have been had in the consultation itself, but just a basic reminder on this was your weight, basal metabolic rate, body fat, muscle mass, and so on 6 weeks ago, and this is your weight, BMR, muscle mass, fat mass, etc. now. Remember your areas of consistency. These next 6 weeks, it's hydration and nutrition. Let's focus on those things hard, and we look forward to your next consultation in 6 weeks' time. That's all that really needs to be said, just as a basic reminder to the client that we do care, we are tracking, and we are monitoring your lifestyle journey. I hope you all found this masterclass video extremely helpful, and happy progressive training.